good evening. We are in the lithography workshop from the Munich Künstlerhaus, and we are doing tonight the last activity from our exhibition, EDITH, between Fanzines and Artist Book. And now we will have a reading from Dominik Wendland.
Ja, ich bin Dominik Wendland. Hier seht ihr nochmal ein Bild von mir in orthopädisch bedenklicher Haltung. Und ich werde jetzt 3 kurze Geschichten für euch lesen. 2 auf Deutsch, 1 auf Englisch. Und das ist die erste. Und sie handelt davon, wie ich aufgehört habe zu rauchen. Und die Geschichte heißt: Ich liebe Rauchen. Ich liebe Rauchen. Es ist die perfekte Beschäftigung. Ich bin darin zu Hause. In Zigaretten kann man rechnen. Zeit in Rauch umwandelndes Messinstrument. Wie lange geht das noch so weiter? Rauchen ist ein in sich selbst abgeschlossener Vorgang. Übersichtlich und bewältigbar. Ich will hier raus. Man stellt etwas her, um etwas zu zerstören. Und mit diesem etwas auch etwas in sich selbst. Noch einmal ziehen. Ich kann nicht mehr. Ich will nicht mehr. Ist es endlich genug? Ja, Ende. Das war die erste Geschichte. Ja. Und dann mache ich einfach direkt weiter und lese noch eine zweite. Und die ist auf Englisch jetzt und heißt Country Side. So crowded. Oh, so loud. And what is this smell? I don't want to know. I'm out. Just me and you, my trusty steed, and this hat is all I need to be somewhere else, become someone else. On top of it all, but part of it as well. nature, guide me. Show me the way so I can see for myself. It's so boring here. Fuck. Ende. Also von der zweiten Geschichte. Genau. Und dann kommt jetzt noch eine andere Geschichte, die ich gerade erst fertig geschrieben habe. Die ist noch unveröffentlicht. Und ja, etwas inspiriert von meiner zu hohen Bildschirmzeit während Corona. Und die Geschichte heißt Home, Screen, Home. Bildschirmzeit ist die schönste Zeit. Morgens bringt mich dein Wecker in den Tag. Abends bringt mich dein Sleep-Timer ins Bett. Wir rollen gemeinsam durch die Laken. Du versteckst dich unter meinem Kopfkissen. Ich leg dich auf mein Herz. Ui. Dein Touchscreen ist so empfindsam. Ui. Ui. Er flimmert unter meinen sanften Berührungen. Ui. Wir kommen uns immer näher. Ich aktiviere deine Bluetooth-Kopfhörer. Sie flüstern mir zärtlich ins Ohr. You are connected. Gerade noch 0 werden wir 1. Ja, Ende, das war's. Auch mit der Lesung jetzt. Ich bin fertig. Dankeschön fürs Zuhören. Okay. Wollen wir kurz Plätze tauschen?
Und die Computer geht weg
Den
jetzt.
hier so?
Willst du das haben, die Computer um den Chat? Was?
Danke.
Darf ich es halt weg? Oh. Ich glaube, du hast genug Akku. Falls es ausgeht, was? Doch, dann geht's du. Ich glaube, du kommst. Hello again, my name is Raquel, and since some months I'm ruling the lithography workshop in the Munich Künstlerhaus, and we made this exhibition with Karina Müller and Dominik Wendland, which will talk again.
Yeah, hello again from me. I will shortly introduce our participants today. I'm Dominik Wendland, hi again, illustrator and comic person. This is Hubert Kretschmer, artist, art teacher, publisher, and connoisseur of all published things in book arts, I'd say.
Hello.
Hello. Reinhard Grüner, collector of the most extraordinary books out there in the world, and yeah, as well a well-known connoisseur of books in the world. And then we have Karishma Shugani Nankani, artist, book artist and illustrator and visual storyteller. Yeah, that's for now, I think, it, and we can maybe go on with to show some examples maybe from Karishma's work.
would you like to introduce yourself shortly?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm, as Dominic and Raquel said, I'm an artist, a visual storyteller, designer, and educator. And I've always been fascinated with the materiality and the object of a book, ever since I was a child, I suppose. And a lot of what I do through my art is about visual storytelling and telling a story with my fascination of paper and what is the object of a book, and how by manipulating the object you can literally enter a story. So, it's okay. For example, thank you. This is what I call a pop-up story box, inspired by a story from the collection Just So Stories by Rudyard Kipling. And I use the materiality of the paper and the paper cutting to be able to narrate the story, but also offer the reader the possibility of playing around with all the elements and telling the story in his or her or their own way. When I talk about the materiality of the paper, I talk a lot about, well, I feel a lot about the layering of the story, both physically and metaphorically speaking. So this is one example. I don't know if you have any questions.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you so fast, but now you said a couple of things that I consider will be important to talk about from the beginning, because as you know, EDITH likes to talk between the concepts about what fanzine is, an artist's book, and how nowadays these terms are actual. And I think you can explain a little bit about that, and then Reinhard and Hubert can also extend it or tell what you think about it, or you, Dominic, also. Would you explain us, like through your works? We can see it afterwards more when you show us more details. But maybe what is for you, or what is your work with books?
I think for me, an artist's book is a book made by an artist, and it's also, well, it's so hard to define, because I think it really can't be defined in a certain, it's very complicated to put a name on it, but it's the intention of what you want to tell through the book. I think also what I was saying before, it's the materiality of a book object connects, for me personally as an artist, my creativity in a different way. So that when I am making a book, I literally enter inside the narrative and I cut away, for example, this is a theater book version of the same story. And
the same story?
Yes, it's the same story. Mm-hmm. And I do these kinds of books without planning them before. So because I have more of an Oriental tradition of storytelling and also of drawing, I don't use the Renaissance perspective, and I use the layering of the pages and the physical paper. And I literally cut my way into the story. So I don't plan it before. Using the book object, I enter inside the story. And page by page, I start planning. So I might plan 2 or 3 or 4 pages in advance. And as I proceed, I understand that this figure has to go in front of this one that is hiding, but for example, this little eye is showing, so it's revealing something of the story. And that's why I call it visual storytelling, because the text, you can read the text, but the images are unveiling something different, and they're objects that invite the oral tradition as well, in my case.
Yeah. So maybe from now that you say, I will go to Hubert, because you are talking about storytelling and narrative, and it's all connected with information. And then I think for the people that is looking at us tonight, it will be maybe good to have an historical point of view of what a fanzine is, or an artist book, and also how narrative then is connected with it, or how the information through orality or written is. But maybe would you like to explain us a little bit what historically we understand about fanzine and artist book? And
artist books started in the 60s in America, and primarily there were printed books, concept books. I came from the concept art and from minimal art. And during the time, the meaning of what is an artist book, it changed a little bit, or it becomes a wider range. So we have books like one-of-a-kind books. We have original-made books, books with where the making of the book is very important. Also how the paper, the material, the binding of the book, the size, and also the story inside the books. No? And the conceptual books are mostly very cheap. They're printed sometimes in a huge edition. Maybe like Ed Rashe printed some thousands of books. And in the meantime, I think the Begriff, what you say, Begriff? The term of an artist books is, for me, is not so clear. It becomes more, wie kann man sagen?
Extended or opened?
Yeah, opened, yeah. So that for me it's in the moment very difficult to decide what is an artist book or not. No? And so my definition is like yours. I think if an artist make a book, it could be an artist book. Yeah, it's possible that it is an artist book.
Yes,
yeah?
I know that you want to say something, because I have to tell you there are some films that we made that they will be published shortly, after, from now on, any day, but shortly. And then you can hear Hubert explaining about his archive and other things that he does, and also Reinhard. And I think I know what you will answer, but I let you talk. And it's like I'm thinking about the book from Seipel, because it's not from the 60s, it's much before, and it's also connected maybe with comic. So maybe, yeah.
I mean, I found a very nice definition of what an artist book is. It's by a very famous curator and collector, Guy Scherenen. And he said, an artist book is not a book about art. An artist book is not an art book. An artist book is a work of art. And I think this is, for me, the central definition. And what art is really very, very open. And so I think artist book is basically art. And it can be a fanzine, can be printed offset, it can be one of a kind or unique book.
But there are still, I mean, saying, sorry to interrupt you like that, but saying like the artist book is like art, then we broaden it up even more, the field of what it is. But or maybe we want to try to put a lid on it tonight as well, kind of. And I was wondering, because you have a huge collection of like wonderful books that are sometimes not even that bookish, or that like really broaden the definition of what even is a book. Like some things, like from the Russian author Mikhail Krasik, he did this book in this canister, basically, and
the whiskey bottle.
It was a whiskey bottle.
He cut into pieces and inserted the text as a leporello inside the bottle.
Yeah.
If you want to read it, you have to open it. Like
we have the chance to see this book in the film about you. You explain it there.
Yeah, but what I wanted to ask you actually is like where is your Grenze? Where's your border? What was the book you got presented in your in your years collecting that you yourself weren't really sure, is this still a book?
well, basically, I think whenever I have a look at a book or someone offers me a book, then I look at the book and very, very quickly I can decide if it will be part of my collection or not. So it's just a matter of emotion for me.
Yeah.
So looking at her books, for example, that tell a story is very interesting for me, because all of the books I have, they tell stories. And my life tells stories. And sometimes there are connections between the story that the book tells and my life. And sometimes there aren't any connections. So this is the basic thing for me. So it does not matter how the book looks like. It can be a bottle of mineral water like this one. I remember some time ago, many years ago, we had a party, the place where I was living in Fürstenfeldbruck, and then one of the artists started taking a mineral water bottle, and with a black marker, whatever, she wrote a text on it, and then this has become part of my collection. We ordered pizza from a Pizza Express, and someone took this pizza menu and made a piece of art out of it. So the limits I have to artist books, they're endless. There are so many things which can be a book. So it can be a stone with a text by Hermann Hesse or whatever.
Or just a piece of gingerbread.
Yeah, for example.
With some elaborated frosting on it.
Exactly, which sometimes is eaten up by animals, yes.
I think the opposite from your collection or from your kind of artist books is if you find a little paper on the street and you folded it a little bit, and you can also say it's like a little book. Yeah? And I have some fanzines or zines or little magazines from Brandstifter, perhaps, from Mainz. He found some papers on the street and make photocopies and copied this little booklet. And I think it's also an artist book. It's not very expensive. It's very cheap. It's no great idea.
Well, because this is what you explain in the film that we take from you, that fanzines come, in fact, from the music scene more, and it's done from groups that are like very fan from something, and then they make a very cheap edition, and they share between. I wanted to ask you something about that, because it's not clear for me if historically fanzines, when they were about music and so, if they were sold, or the people just share it with each other. You know how it is?
Both. No? Some of them were given free to the friends in a little circle of people. And others make little distros. They went to the concerts of a music group and sold for 1 mark or so. Very cheap, photocopied little magazines, or had fanzines halt. No? And I think that that the fanzine also changed what it is, the meaning of the fanzine. No? And today, I think it's made very cheap. It's very easy to do. You can make it very quick and very personally booklet or a little booklet, yeah. And was heißt Anspruch?
A lot of demand, high demand?
Yeah, not so high demand normally, and very intimate sometimes also. Yeah.
And what I like about, I mean, I'm not collecting these things, but what I like about them is that, especially made by young people, they don't have a lot of money and they don't want to earn a lot of money by making these fanzines. So it's just the pleasure of doing something with your hands and showing it to the people. This is what I like. I mean, when I have a book which costs about 1,000 euros, it's a different thing. This is what is a positive thing about fanzines and all these little mags.
And no, you asked.
But there's like a different aspect to it as well, right? Apart from doing something with your hands, I think it's especially like the reproducibility of the thing, to do exactly what Hubert told us about, to share it, basically, to get it out. That's why like being cheap and quick to make is also kind of a necessity for this format of the zine, I'd say, right? It's not totally about the form. Maybe is less important in that case than the content of the thing itself. Yeah.
The content is mostly very personal from
It's
the
mostly,
makers
sorry?
of personal, also
Yeah.
intim. It's about their life or their ideas or their wishes or dreams or what they are angry with or their feelings they put into this little magazine or fanzine or so. And they also play with material, with different colors of papers, different papers, and maybe also with different kinds of binding. And so there's a big variety also of fanzine, what it is today. No? So, and if you look in this exhibition, you have an idea what a fanzine could be. Yeah? So I'm surprised to see what is possible. Yeah?
You are surprised.
Yes, I'm
You have
surprised.
like
Yeah, I have thousands of them.
60,000
Yes.
pieces
But
collected in your archive, and like
And-
30,000 more still not cataloged by it. I imagine you a little bit like kind of a Scrooge McDuck of zines, who's like, you have this.
Yeah, but I always find new things, and I'm very surprised. I can be surprised every day. So therefore, I like to collect things, yeah, because it's a wonderful life to be a collector, yeah.
Well, this is something
yeah.
I was thinking about to say when I was preparing that, and I thought pleasure is something that it's for sure binding all of us, because I don't think you talk about a book that costs 1,000 euro, but that's not the normality about that. Or it is. And then this is one question that I make to you. And the second one, when you talk about you, Hubert, when you talk about fanzines, I think this idea about being fast and easy done is something that it's no more like that, because when you do lithography fanzine, it's also not something like to copy in a photocopy. So I think nowadays, or this is my impression, I ask you, that many fanzines are very well think and very well designed, and they are done also with other graphical techniques, not just with photocopy as before. And these two questions for you, and then maybe you show us another book.
I think both is possible. Huh? You have fanzines that are very intensive, very complicated doing, and others are like punk fanzines. They have fun to do it. No big sense in it. Yeah, they want to be a little bit aggressive against someone or so. No? Or you have political fanzines where it is important to react very quick to a situation in a city or in a country. So you have also a very big variety of intentions to do this, yeah. And yeah, this. Mehr habe ich da nicht zu sagen.
And would you say that is pleasure one of your motivations to collect fanzines? And you have so a huge archive, and you were talking the other day, saying that at the beginning you were the one that was buying them, but at some point the people were sending it to you, and at some point you were like buying lots where a lot of material is there. And my question is, do you have time to look at all of them? Have you done it? And do you still do it regularly? Like it's something that it's part of your life and pleasure life to sit and look at the fanzines or the books or the publications or whatever you call them?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day, yes.
Good.
Wow.
So, jetzt weiß ich nicht, wie ich sagen soll. Ich habe den Faden verloren.
Es ist, glaube ich, so ein, you are a kind of Scrooge McDuck, right? You have your whole archive of zines and stuff, and then you jump from this tower, and then you bathe kind of in them. That's what I imagine.
I look at every item which comes in the collection
So
or in
you-
the archive,
okay.
so it's very important for me to have a look at everyone. But it's not so long sometimes, not very intensive, because there are very many pieces. And ich habe jetzt irgendwie den Faden verloren.
And
Ich
there
weiß es
are things you wish they won't be in your archive, and how you react
The
to them.
intention. Intention was the question from you. My intention. No? For me, it's important to save them, because I saw that much of the printed material disappeared during the time, and I found it is a part of the cultural heritage. This printed materials. No? So, if you look in the big libraries, you can not find so many of this material, no? So not so much of this material. So my idea was to give a place where you can find them, and also to go to the internet, and you can make a research, and you can find it from everywhere in the world. And this is for me very important, that you know here is a place you can find this copy from fanzine or from whatever, yeah, from a book or from an item. No? And to preserve this and to wertschätzen, ich weiß gar nicht, wie man das sagt auf Englisch.
Appreciate.
Appreciate, oder?
Yeah, appreciate.
This is for me very important. No? And it's not so important if it's expensive or not. So if a young man or an artist or a woman or a girl or punk or whoever make it, then I think it's important to save this. No?
Well, I think if I may say something.
Yes, I wanted to ask you now.
I have a different approach.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
first of all, I look at the things I buy very, very closely. And all of them are connected to my life. Just to give you one story, many, many years ago, my mother was in a home for old people, and she was on the verge of dying, and she felt very, very bad, and she could hardly hardly breathe. And always in springtime, there were ravens or birds outside the place where she lived. There was a little park, and there were birds, and they were very, very loud. They made everything dirty. Then I saw the birds, and I saw my dying mother in her bed. And it was an image which I had in my mind. And sometime later, an artist friend visited me, and he showed me his new book. It was a book called Raven People, Rabenmenschen. And it was a text about people dying in the war, and it was about ravens being birds of death. And then suddenly I had the connection between my dying mother and the situation, which is an eternal situation everywhere in the world, which made the book made it easy for me to understand what was happening to my mother. This is just one example of many that happened in my life that I had I experienced very drastic situations, and I couldn't get out of the situation, and only by the help of an artist book, which sounds very strange, I could manage a situation.
I think that's a very big difference
Yeah,
between our collections. I'm not very close to the items I collect. Sometimes I buy 200 or 500 scenes from a shop in New York or from Barcelona or so, because I think if you have a huge variety of material from perhaps 200 artists, it's a part of the culture. And this is for me important, not the single one, no, not the special story of everything is for me not so important. No? But I see the complete collection.
Yeah, but so as far as I understood your viewpoints, I think you, Reinhard, in first instance, you make the collection for you, for your pleasure, for your interest.
Yeah, for the people that visit me, for example.
But so much as I know you, you are very kind to show your collection and to bring it to the people. And would you say that your collections are from formally different, or just from Ausgangspunkt, I don't know how to say.
The starting point?
The starting point, so it's like they come from different points, but at the end they are the same. And what I see, it's maybe the content has some kind of different formality or shown, or can you clear that?
At the end, all of them are absolutely different. So they're unique books, just one of a kind, from an artist in Moscow, for example. And then you have books which are with a higher run, maybe 100, 200 copies. But in the end, so I do not have an archive, I have a collection. And so in the end, for me it's important that they reflect on my life. But the situations they reflect on are basically human situations, which do not only apply to my life, it applies to many lives on this planet.
Not only collect, you curate, basically.
Yeah.
And I find this very interesting because I have the feeling you have a similar passion, the both of you, but you are more about the narrative of the culture, like you said, like to have the more of an overview, where you have like total personal. You seek the personal narrative, not only in the book, but then again a connection to yourself. Both seeking this kind of narrative, but maybe on a different basis. And I think this is a kind of an interesting thing to have, like as a mediator between you two, because I think this is also something that's connecting these terms of fanzine and artist book, which we talk about here as like two separate things, but then again, where is the line to differentiate these two things? And Karishma, I think you have a very beautiful term. We talked before. You have a very beautiful term, like ignoring all that artist book or fanzine or thing. You call your works, your art, storytelling objects. That's what I find really nice and really sums it up quite well. But nevertheless, I want to ask you, what is a storytelling object? Really, can every book be a storytelling object as well, or do I have to imbue it with some kind of magic before so it becomes this piece of art?
Well, I think a book in itself is magic, because it is a storytelling object. But when I coined the term, and I'm going to pick up on two things that both you, Hubert, and Reinhard said that really resonate with me, because Hubert, you talked about the preservation of this culture and what was trying to be recorded on paper, and a lot of what moves me as an artist in my work, and I founded a school called l'École de Papier, which is the School of Paper, which through research I constantly investigate ancient tradition narrative techniques and storytelling objects, which I coin as storytelling objects. And what you said about preservation for me is really resonates, because as an artist there's so much of this cultural heritage in storytelling objects, such as cutting out a silhouette and making this shadow and telling a story with this shadow, or making a puppet theater out of two pieces of paper. And it doesn't have to be expensive, and it can be so accessible to everybody. And not only accessible to everybody, and this is the kind of pedagogical part of my work, is that you can take it to a workshop and make just a print on a piece of white paper with a black and white printing, which is very economical, reproducing a shadow puppet theater. And in half an hour, you have a room full of children making their own shadow puppet theaters, telling their own stories, and empowering them with this, well, not empowering them, that's very egotistical, I'm sorry, but kind of accompanying them to be able to tell this story. For me, that's a storytelling object. It's an object that, well, tells a story, obviously, but it's this possibility to have many different readings. I don't want to say interpretations, but to be able to play with what the object is offering you. A book in itself does that. I can read the same text as any one of us here, and I can have a different interpretation. And this resonates to something that you said, Reinhard, about how you pick and choose the stories that resonate with your life, almost as if these artists are making the books for you. But they have made it for them with their own intention, but that universal sense of story resonates with something emotional in your memory, or in our collective memory, that can be picked on. So I am lost now. I just went off on one.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I would like you to show
Yeah.
us the Jungle Book.
So this is another one of Kipling, and I must say I have a very conflictive, or I especially used to have a conflictive relationship with Kipling's literature, because I found him quite colonial and racist and machist, and then I went on a trip to India when I was doing a master's in picture books for 2 weeks, and I bought a Penguin copy of the text, and I fell in love with the text, which I was very angry that I fell in love with it, because I didn't want to like it, but it was a beautiful text that moved me, and I had to make this project for my master's degree. And so I decided to make paper cutting collage. This is a very old maquette. It's an original piece of work, and everything's falling apart, but I just kind of entered this frenzy of making and cutting and putting everything together, and I told this story, and I like the idea of the materiality, like I said before, because you can layer it up, and because it's transparent, you can see shadows of the jungle. And then I always had this idea that I would like to make a small limited edition with screen printing. And this was a very interesting process for me, because I let it pass maybe about 10 years, and then when we came home with our adopted son, Ray, from India, I went to a screen printing artist atelier in Saragossa, and I took her the original book, and I said, I really want to make a small edition, but I want to remake all the images because now I want to make it as a gift to my son, and in some way using the Jungle Book tell his story and his arrival. And so I remade all the originals, and I made them also in collage, but in different layers so that she could translate them. So it was almost a collective work because she then translated the images to make the fotolitos, the silk screen frames, and from there printed this book. And then going back to the idea of the storytelling object, I wanted to be able to offer this object that you can play around with, so there's many different possibilities of making it circular and flipping the pages. You can put a torchlight through it and look through it and read it in many ways, and then the text, which are selected poems by Kipling, go apart. And also in the selection of the text, picking up on what you said, Reinhard, these songs were written years and years ago and had nothing to do with my son, but I picked the ones that really resonated with his arrival. So, and it's a separate poster. So that was a really interesting process.
I wanted you to show it because I would like to say something about it. That it's very interesting for me about talking. We are in a lithographic workshop, and then I wanted to go a little bit about graphic techniques and ask you, for example, a fanzine. I have the idea that historically was more done for more than one person. And artist books is for me the idea that first comes to me is like an artist that make a book. Mm-hmm. And then I find out that many of these books, also fanzines nowadays, are done with reproductive techniques, which can be graphic techniques. Mm-hmm. And then we have like the concept of collaborative printmaking, which you have an artist and a printmaker that makes to you. And I think that's the case of this one. Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you how much is for you then work together, or you still feel it's your work?
It's interesting because when I worked with Tinta Entera and Natalia Arroyo, who is the artisan behind it, she said that it was my work, and I felt that it was a collective work. So she didn't want to sign as a co-artist because the images are mine, but we did make a co-edition, so it's between L'École de Papier and Tinta Entera together, because that part of the production was hers. And I really felt that she did an incredible job as an artist to translate the images and be able to make screens of them that were very faithful to the originals. And that requires a lot of savoir and
So it was a good translation.
Yeah.
Would you use this word, a translation?
Absolutely.
Because I see something I would like to ask you about is if she, with the collaboration with her, if you change things because of the technique.
Yeah, especially she changed especially the colors. Mm-hmm. And then there were certain things, for example, the only thing that we had a little bit of editing was, for example, the shadows over here, and just adjusting some very fine tuning, but but it was very little adjustment. I found her work to be beautiful, and I love the experience of working with an artisan in that way to create the images and to translate the images into a different process. Yeah.
And now we apologize us because we had another two participants in the round table that unfortunately because of sickness they cannot be here, and it's Constanze Metzel from Metzel Editions and Stephanie Hammann from Hammann von Mir Verlag. And I think I would like to still talk about editing, and I know you have edited some of your books, and I would like to ask you which number of edition it is, and also Hubert, I will ask you too, because I know you are a publisher too, so maybe you explain us a little bit how an edition comes to affect to the content of the work, how editors decide about the work and how it changes, and a little bit also I would like to talk, also you, Reinhard, can talk about, because I think this kind of books, or nowadays books are mostly getting nicer or specialized, because it's not something that is part of our quotidianity with so much digitalizing and so I think many libraries and people is getting more near of that, but still be difficult for the right public to find these things. So now the questions are how it affects to make an edition to the content as an artist, the content of your work, and for you as a publisher, how you behave yourself with the artist of the people, and how much the money have a role into that, and you as a collector. Not, of course, you know more how to find these things, but how the people get to buy these things if they want to buy, or how it's the movement.
Okay. This book, for example, I decided to make 200 copies, and because it was a co-edition, I kept a part of the copies, and Natalia from Tintantera kept another part, so that was part of the deal together, and she could sell them in her studio and I could sell my part. And because it's screen printing, it was quite affordable to create. So for me it was really important. Most of these books, well, I sell them, but and they're quite affordable, but I wanted it to be something personalized, so they're numbered and signed as well. And a lot of them I gave as gifts, because it was something that I wanted to do as a welcome gift for my son. So it was something that was really important, and I decided to publish it on my own because I really wanted to control absolutely all the details of the publishing, the dedication, the text, the typography. So it was really important for me to do it that way. I made another publication, which is this theater book. And in this one, the original is all hand cut. And I made a crowdfunding campaign so that I could afford to make a laser cut edition, because initially when I made the book, I thought I can make a small edition and we can sit around a table with a bunch of friends and hand cut them. And I thought that's just crazy. And I don't know
Your
how many.
friends,
I have really good friends. And then I thought that's just absolutely crazy. So we raised a crowdfunding campaign, and of course it's not exactly the same, and a lot of it is lost from the original. Well, you see all these details of the lines and there's so many things that changed, but it was as faithful to the original as we could do with printing and a laser cut. And here, because we did a crowdfunding campaign, we raised the funds to make 700 copies, of which I still have a few, and this is so. And then this book is called Tonight and Back. So when you get to the end, the stars come out and you can travel back. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to add on to that.
Should I go on? Or you want to go on?
I can give a little answer about the role of a publisher. And my role as a publisher is not a commercial one. So you cannot make money with this kind of books I publish. And for me, it's very important, since 40 years since I do this, not a business, this job, is to respect the ideas and the conditions of the artist. If we say we make an edition of 20 or we make an edition of 2000, if I can help him to realize his ideas, I see me as a supporter for him, for the artist. This is my role as a publisher. This is not the normal role of a normal publisher who publish a book in many thousands of copies or so, or very expensive artist books to make money. No? And I think that an artist should have the chance to find publishers to realize his ideas. And there are more, or many of these publishers exist in the 80s. They publish books which is not really a business in this kind. Yeah? If you get back the cost of the printing and everything what you have to pay, then it's very good.
It's a good deal already.
It's a good deal, yeah, but mostly it is not a really good deal. No? And some or many of my books I publish, I give for free or very cheap money. So it's very important for me to distribute the ideas, to communicate with this printed material. This is my idea, primarily as an editor, no? Or as a publisher. No? And this is very different from that what is a publisher normally. Yeah? Normally a publisher is a businessman. And you look, is this a famous artist? Is this a theme I can sell? Is it sex or politic, or it is with what I don't know what you can sell, yeah? So I think, and this role as a publisher you can also find in my archive. That is the same background. So, no? So I collect mostly things which had not been a business. Yeah? So therefore I have no, or very rare, expensive books. I have some, but it is not the main part of the archive. No? And books or editions Reinhard likes, they are very expensive. So you can live as an artist from this. If you make 10 copies and each copy will cost 2,000 euro perhaps, then you have a chance to live from this books.
This is what I wanted to ask you from the other side. How are your criteria to say, okay, I will buy a 2,000 euro book, which is why you decide you want to do it? It has to do with...
First of all, to answer on Hubert's statement, it's not the fact that an artist sells a book at 1,000 or 2,000 euros and makes a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
The point is, when he makes the book, he pays thousands of euros to produce the book, 20,000, 30,000 euros, and then he sells the book at a price of 1,000 or 2,000 euros. So the money he earns sounds a lot, but it is not a lot. That is the point, and the reason why I collect these books I've explained before. But I think more interest to people is, how do you find these books? And there are different fairs in Germany. For example, if you go to Hamburg, there's the Buchdruckkunst famous fair, which is this year in March. In Berlin, you have in autumn, you have the book art book fair, it's called. Or you have in Mainz the Mini-Pressenmesse, or you have in Munich the Super Books. So there are a lot of book fairs all around Germany. You shouldn't go to the Buchmesse Frankfurt because that has become really boring by now. But go to these little fairs and they're worthwhile, and also get information on the different collectors' communities. There are some of them like Pirkheimer Gesellschaft. They have an excellent website, or Leipziger Bibliophilenabend, or Maximilian Gesellschaft. Get information on them from the internet, and then you find a lot of information on how to get books. And the interesting thing is, when you go to these fairs, like the Super Books, for example, you will find that there are a lot of people going there. And I was wondering why such a lot of people attend these fairs, and I think it's very simple, because what art scenes and artist books have in common is that they are very, very complex pieces of art. And everyone talks about being complex in modern times, but in reality, many things are not complex at all. And so if you look at an artist book, and if you leaf through the artist book, it's a movement in time and in space, and it has a story, and it goes on and on and on, and this is what it makes it interesting. So whenever I go to exhibitions, I quite often see a painting or a graphic work or an installation. So what about being complex? So a lot of complexity is really missing in modern art, I think.
I think this is what you say. I like it very much, because an artwork is very elitaire. Yeah? Then one man is owning this work, and he can hang it in his living room and has fun with this picture. Yeah. So I think an artist book or a fanzine or artist publication is a democratic way for art. Yeah? And many people can look to this artwork every time. They can go to the toilet, they can go to the bed, they can read it in the train. You can read it everywhere, yeah? And so often how you like to look at this book, yeah? And this democratic aspect is for me very, very important, no? And therefore I like it if you have more editions so you can spread your ideas. I think that's, for me, a very important aspect of artist book.
This point, I think, is also very interesting, this democratic aspect, because one part of my collection has to do with books published at the end of the German Democratic Republic. And a lot of young artists that were risking basically their existence because they were making these critical books that criticized the state. And some of them, like Helge Leiberg, I think, they were thrown out of the German Democratic Republic because they were producing books which had a critical impetus. And so books in my collection, many of them, they have also to do with democracy. And
it's another
way,
it's another aspect, but it is, yes.
You were maybe talking more about inclusion, like to include as many people as you can in this story, to get them connected with and over that story.
That is, there no curator, there is no hindrance, or you can reproduce it if you don't need so much money. This is also an aspect of democracy for me, that it's made cheap and easy to produce a book and to find ways of distribution, also like the super books or other fairs like the Mini-Pressenmesse or so. And in the meantime, we have many fairs in the world of this kind of books. No?
I'm happy that you say that, because and now I talk very personally from my political statement, because I hear you telling that in the film, and I was thinking about, okay, it's a good argument, like this cheapness and fast making. But for me nowadays, the cheapness and fast making, it turned out to the other side, which it means a lot of injustice, and it means a lot of consuming fast, more, and that I think, not in your case maybe, but as a political statement, and especially after this pandemic, and this is something that is a statement also for my ruling of the workshop, and that I have seen it in other places in the world, like in Mexico or in Colombia, that graphic techniques implicate or mean to work together, and also to make a book or to make an edition or this collaborative printmaking. And this is for me very political, to come together and make something with a person. And then I was thinking, okay, this kind of booklets, and so they are like mostly people that have same interest, and it's very political, mostly like these punk fanzines that you were showing. But I will go back to that and rescue this idea of relationship, and maybe to slow down a little bit. I don't know how you see this, like you. You want to talk more about that?
I resonate a lot with the slowing down, and also with the accessibility and the democracy that you were talking about. Like in my work as an artist and also as an educator, I like being able to make my work accessible, and work in general, and beautiful things that and this is why, like, the original can be a one-off piece, but then if I reproduce it and try to find a way of making it accessible for 30 or 40 or 20 euros, then that's a way of sharing my thoughts and making this piece of art and accessible to other people. And I think there's something that's interesting about that. About the slowing down, I take between 7 and 10 years to make a book, so so I'm in no hurry. And I really enjoy the process, and I think that, for example, to the naked eye, from here to here, there's not that much difference, but for me there is a big difference, because there's 10 years of my life and my experience, and when I sat down to make this book, it was completely different, although like I said, it might look the same. I don't know if that's what you were referring to.
Yeah,
with time.
and now I was thinking, I don't remember how is you remember these fanzines that you were showing from the 80s that have this technique, I have forget the name, where they cut these letters and they just put them together, the text. You remember how it's called? It's very specific from fanzines from these years, from the 80s.
Stamps?
No, not with stamps. They cut.
Spiritus, Umdruck oder so, diese.
Yeah, I think. And then I was thinking, well, so fast is not to sit and make this fanzine. And I think it just the intention. Like, it's not a commercial, but it's also Charisma's books are not the intention to be commercial. Maybe some of the artists that you collect, because they are such well-known, that they can say, okay, now I'm going to ask for much money, but I don't think that in this canal it's, or it is, there are artist books or fanzines that you think they are done for commercial purpose.
I think to realize an artist publication, I would say, is one thing. To consume it, to read it, is another thing. You can read it very slow. You can read it sometimes. You can read it 10 times, 100 times. Yeah? So you have much time to read it. Yeah? You can print it and publish it in 1 hour, and you can have fun with this, or you can work with this book as a reader for your whole life, perhaps. Yeah? So there is no connection between the speed of producing the work and the consuming the work.
You can print and publish in 1 hour?
I
let you
tried,
do my
yes,
next scene.
okay, I tried, yes. We tried.
Yeah.
No, it means very quick. You can produce a printed work very quick if you want. And I think it's also very quick if it needs 2 days, yeah, or 3 days. Normally for a book you need some months or some years, yeah, to produce a book sometimes, yeah. So what is quick, it's very
Relative.
It depends from so many things, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And how many people are involved,
yeah,
and
yeah.
what kind of tools you have available.
Genau, yeah. If you have a printing machine in your studio or not, and so on. If you have a copy machine or not. And the idea that many people are working together at a fanzine is also in the punk. The first punk scenes also they were working together. Yeah, they were sitting on a table and cutting out and gluing the snippets of paper and make it very fast together. Yeah. And important is to go out with your ideas, yeah, to open your space, yeah, if you give them away to other people. This is very important.
I would like to read shortly a couple of things that the people in the chat has written, and they write you, thank you Hubert for mentioning Asphalt Bibliothek.
Das war der Brandstifter.
Hello Charisma, Rai is well and happy to see you. And then to Mr. Gruner said something very passionate. It's what poetry or literature can be for the reader, and that happens to those who love art. Sorry for my English. And then, now I read that, we were talking before about something that I would like to mention it too, because now, and you were talking also about storytelling, and I was asking Charisma about her books not having text, and then I'm a very passionate, like Karina, about typography and text, and I forgot to bring a book that I have about visual poetry, which is also a way to make art just with the text and playing with it. And then we finally finished talking about narrative, and maybe would you like to talk a little bit about that? And I think you, Dominic, wanted to talk also about it a little bit. Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Go ahead, please.
Oh, please.
Where to start? Let me collect myself
Okay.
for a moment.
Or maybe you can, I think a good example is this book. Yeah.
Well, we were talking about narrative and asking whether an artist's book has to have a narrative or not. And my question and thinking was, what is a narrative? Because when you put a collection of images together, there's a silent dialogue that begins between them. And in the case of this book was already published before. It's called This Body is Human, and written by a dear friend, the writer Carlos Grasatoro. And it was published as a children's picture book, and when I read the text, it was out of print when I read it. I fell in love with it and told him very seriously, when it's published again, I will do the images. It was very assertive. I never normally talk like that, but I felt very strongly about the text, although I had no idea what I was going to make. And 3 months later, he said, okay, we're going to publish it again, please do the images. And so I spent time kind of marinating the ideas in my head, and it's called a poetic atlas of anatomy. So it's this mix of what is scientific and metaphorical and poetic all at once, and it was about the human body. And one day, after months of research and visual research, because as an artist I consume a lot of images and music, but I just let it settle, and then I put it all away. And one day I picked out this Japanese rice paper notebook and created the first image. I cut out the organ from a book of an old book, an anthology of Latin literature in French. And I decided to start making the image, and then I realized that I was making an artist's book inspired by the book, and that they would be the originals for the published book. And what I mean by this is that this is an object in its own and has its own narrative, because I'm illustrating the organs in my own order, and the way that they sit on the page tell my own story. And also, I realized that by making it in an artist's book, and because it's a Laparello accordion format, on the other side, all of the stitching, because they're a mixed technique, every image is a silhouette, and then it's worked on with Japanese watercolor and crayons, well, colored pencils, and then it's embroidered. And this narrative is its own narrative on one hand, because of the way that the images speak with each other. And then when I finished this piece, which were the originals for the book, we took very beautiful photographs of them at a design studio called Estudio Pep Carrillo, and they designed the book and made this, which is a completely different narrative object, which accompanies the text and is a book that can be bought quite affordably. So coming back to your question of narrative, I think that the image, the words, the text, the page, they're all elements that create a story. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes.
I don't really have much to add to this.
Oh, please.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. It's everything together, right? It's not, the narrative is not just happening in the text or in the intention of the author, but it's also read by the reader, who brings in their own narrative in a way. And this is why I think why I'm so fascinated with this wording of narrative object, is because you can broaden it up so much. It can be so much more than a book. It can be like a bottle who someone wrote on it, or it doesn't even have to contain text. It can be purely visual. We can communicate in so many different media, and I think this storytelling, this seeking of narrative is something so deeply human. This in the end trying to find a connection over a story told. Yeah, but I open it up more and more, and we wanted in the beginning we wanted to define what is a book, and now we have the conclusion maybe for our evening. Everything can be a book. Everything can be narrative, at least.
It depends from the reader, from his point of view. Was a book with nothing in it, only white pages or black pages, has a narrative. If you see the story in the book, it depends from who is looking at the book. No? Bookmaking, where the typography is very important, and you know about typography, then you have many stories in the book. For other people, this book says nothing. Yeah? If you can read the book, there is no story in the book.
That's again a very nice way to have a relationship, no? Because you narrate something and the other side sees another thing, there is no patronizing there, but at the end there is a relationship there. So.
It's not a monologue. It always happens between people
Absolutely.
in the end.
Yeah, and exactly that, I think that what I personally really wanted with this exhibition, to talk about the in-between of these two terms, and to see how nowadays they relate with each other, and how is it. I hope for the people that have seen it, they can have their own idea, and that it was interesting. And if you like to add something, if not, I will say we can finish here.
One little thing that I just want to throw out there. This morning on the plane over, I went through my notes from a previous workshop I gave on artist books about 4 years ago. And I can't remember who said the quote. I think it was Paul Valéry, but he said, "A book is a garden that you can carry inside your pocket." And I just really loved how that felt inside when I read it, because it ties up so many things that we were saying in a sense. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very nice note to end it on, probably. Thank you again, Karishma. Thank you, Reinhard. Thank you, Hubert. And Raquel, of course. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for listening, for tuning in. And have a nice evening still. Bye.